Hi guys, I found this neat product out. It's called Hot Can. It's a beverage that's hot and the heater comes in its own can. Isn't that cool? You pop the bottom, you turn it upside down, you shake it, and there's a chemical reaction that causes you to have hot cocoa soup in just 3 minutes. So we're gonna try this out. Won't that be fun? I hope so. I hope it doesn't explode! This is the hot can I was telling you about. Just take the top off, discard that, using both thumbs, hold it down for like what it says.
How long does it say?
Till it crunches.
Okay.
Then you shake it for 30 seconds. You may feel it start to get warm.
Yeah.
Is it starting to get warm?
I don't know. Maybe I didn't push it down far enough. Maybe I should push it down. Yeah, now it's getting warm.
Who needs shake weight?
It'll make you work for your hot chocolate.
Oh yeah.
Of course, if you're cold, you know,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
A little bit
Okay.
of working for your hot chocolate's not too bad.
Figure that's about 30 seconds.
Sure.
Then you let it sit straight up like that. And on here, you will see an indicator, and when it goes green, it's ready to pop open and pour, or just drink out a little spout right here.
Awesome. But it definitely feels hot. No doubt about that.
We can see the button starting to get green. Camera has a hard time focusing this close in, but this little button here shows that it's almost ready. And if this button turned red, I wouldn't be able to touch it right now because it says very hot. This just says hot. Do you know how long it's been?
Oh, no, I haven't really paid attention.
Okay. Say it's been about a minute and a half.
Is it 3 minutes or so to wait?
Supposed to, yeah.
Yeah.
Caution, hot after activation. There's a joke in there somewhere that I won't say.
Right, yeah.
Let's see.
Really?
This is made by Hot Can.
Hot can.
How ironic.
Perfect name.
They make this thing with soup. They have tomato soup and chicken soup and hot chocolate and regular coffee. But this is the only one I found at the Dollar Tree.
Yeah, makes sense.
Dollar Tree, a surprise a minute. And it should be about time. Yeah, it's green. So if you want to pop that open,
Okay.
the top doesn't come off. You just have to pull the top tab to the best of your ability.
Okay.
See how it opened down there a little bit? Yeah.
That's hot.
And then you pour it into your receptacle.
Yeah, that was hot on my finger. Seems pretty thick.
Yeah. I guess that's why you shake the thing.
Yeah, it's good and thick.
It's a lie how they they imply marshmallows on the front of the can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I guess you can always add more.
That's a lot of product for one little can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you got a hand warmer. Big time.
Now we have taste test.
Okay, here we go.
Well, what do you think?
Well, let's see. Not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad at all.
It's got a definite chocolatey look to it.
It's thick. It tastes like chocolate.
And it's got a great aftertaste of chocolate. I'd give this 3 out of 5 stars. You know, it's not rich, but for what it is, it's cocoa in a can with its own heater. So I think the cool novelty of it outweighs any limitations of taste, in my opinion. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Hi guys, welcome to the Journey of Jim. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to make a healthier version of a pizza crust. Now, pizza is not healthy, but if you're going to have pizza and want to have pizza, it's a good option to cut calories where you can without sacrificing taste. And this recipe is a good recipe for a flavorful crust that's lower in calories. Alright, first let me show you the equipment and ingredients we need. We will need some table salt, a measuring cup, it doesn't matter what size, table sugar, some canola oil spray. We will need some dry yeast, a half cup measuring cup, mixing spoon, teaspoon, and a tablespoon. We will need some dry powdered milk, some all-purpose flour, and a large mixing bowl and a small mixing bowl. Alright? The first step is we take our canola oil spray and spray the inside, bottom, all sides of the smaller bowl. This is going to be our dough rising bowl, and we'll set that aside. Next step, we turn on the water. This recipe calls for a cup and a half of hot water. Doesn't have to be boiling, it just has to be hot. Okay? Best way to do it is just put on your hot tap and let it run for a while. Check the heat level by just touching the faucet and seeing becoming hot. It may take a couple of minutes. Okay. Now something you need to know, during certain times of the year, like winter as it is now, dough rising is tricky if it's not in a warm enough environment, but I'll show you how to deal with that later, alright? Oh, careful. Water put on high tends to go in and out of a mixing cup really easy, so I just put it on the edge of the stream, the water stream right there. Okay. Cup and a half, just a little more to make sure it's accurate. That's the thing with baking. Baking is a science as well as an art form, but you can't be afraid to just tweak it a little bit, because sometimes you might need to. Next up, we get our dry yeast and our teaspoon. This recipe calls for 3 teaspoons of yeast. When applying yeast to the water, you want to do it with a sprinkling motion to make sure that the yeast is evenly distributed with no clumps. 2 teaspoons and 1 more. Part of the equipment I didn't show you earlier, and one that's definitely needed, if it will get off of these grocery twist ties here, there we go, is a whisk. This is what is called proofing. Well, this is not called proofing the yeast, but what you need to do is make sure all your yeast is completely dissolved into the water. You don't want to over whisk yeast because you're activating proteins once you'll add the flour, and you don't want to abuse your yeast. Yes, I said you don't want to abuse your yeast. Okay, so that's all mixed in there nice. Alright. Our next step is we're going to be adding a teaspoonful of salt to the mix, and we're going to be using the same method by sprinkling it in there. I'm going to put the camera down so I can do that, and I'll be right back with you. teaspoon of salt. If you worry about making your counter messy, do it over the bowl. A little bit more salt is not okay. Sprinkle that in. Okay. Now we have no longer any use for this teaspoon. Pop that in the sink. What I like to do when I clean is, and this is a good tip for all you guys out there that thinking of getting married someday, learn how to clean as you go. When you're done with an ingredient, put it back up in the shelf. When you're done with a tool, put it in the sink or put it in the wash, all right? Next up, we have our powdered milk. Now we're going to need 3 tablespoons of this powdered milk mixture. We're going to do the same thing before. We're going to sprinkle it into the mix, and then we're going to whisk all those ingredients together. I'm having to move kind of fast because this water is getting less and less warm as we speak, and less warm water is going to affect the way the dough rises. Put this camera here. Okay. We need 3 tablespoons of this mix. Okay. Like 1, sprinkle it. 2, sprinkle it just a little bit. All right. And the final one, 3. All right. We're done with the powdered milk. So as we've spoken before, I'm going to put it back in the cabinet. Be right with you. All right. Now then, gonna stir the salt, the milk with the yeast, get that all incorporated into the mix. Now, dough bread rising involves 3 things. It involves water, hot water, it involves yeast, and there needs to be something for the yeast to eat to make the yeast grow, and that's sugar. No way you can get around it. Can't use artificial sweetener. Have to use real sugar, all right? So we take our real sugar, and we're going to be adding 3 tablespoons of the real sugar, okay? Use the same thing as before. Sprinkle it around so you avoid any clumps. 2 tablespoons and 3 tablespoons. Okay, we are done with the tablespoons, so we can put that in the sink. We are done with the sugar, so we can put that back where we found it. We don't drop it all over the cabinet. Put the lid back on the yeast. You want to make sure your yeast is in an airtight container because that can affect it if air gets in there. Alright, now we have our salt, we have our powdered milk, we have our hot water and yeast and sugar. This is what's called proofing. You slowly whisk your water mixture. And are you noticing the foaming action happening? This is what happens when yeast starts to proof, okay? You can tell the yeast is starting to activate by this foaming scenario we've got going here, alright? Now we are done with the whisk. Okay? This recipe, I forgot to mention, is for 2 pizza crusts. You let the dough rise and you divide the dough in half and you can make 2 pizza crusts. Okay, the next step is going to get kind of messy. We're going to be adding all-purpose flour to the mix. Now when adding all-purpose flour to any bread or crust mixture, you want to go a little bit at a time. So we'll just sprinkle just a little bit in. The reason we're doing this is because you never really know exactly how much flour is going to take to make a dough mixture. You want to add enough flour to where it's an elastic, non-sticky dough, but you also want to have the dough chase around the bowl when you mix it with the spoon. Okay, so we need a little bit more flour, a little bit more. Already can tell we need a little bit more, and you'll be able to know this better just by experience about how much flour it takes for a specific ingredient. Okay, mix it up a little bit more. Hard to hold the camera and mix this at the same time. Alright, you can see it's starting to incorporate a little bit. We're almost there. Needs more flour. A little bit at a time. Sprinkle, 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 sprinkle. Alright. Keep going. Okay, see how it's starting to chase the dough around the bowl and starting to make the bowl clean? That's what you're basically looking for. Okay, now this next part is called kneading. I'm going to need to put the camera down. See, I'm going to need to put the camera down and knead. Basically what kneading is you're putting some of the all-purpose flour on your hands and you're mixing and making little holes in the dough with your fingertips and folding it over itself again and then again and again. You're kneading the dough. You're making the yeast and all the ingredients be incorporated into the full dough. So in the end you'll have an elastic ball shape that we're going to put in these bowls behind us that we sprayed with cooking spray at the beginning. And I'm going to put the camera down because this is kind of messy. Alright, we've finished kneading the dough here, but I'm going to show you what I did before to knead it. Okay, when you have your dough chasing around the spoon, you add a little extra flour so your hands can work with the dough, because the dough is going to be very, very sticky. You put the dough down flat, you mash it with your hand, and you start to make little holes in it with your fingertips. Now this will help the dough rise. You fold it over, flatten, mash it, more holes, turn it over, flatten, mash, and more holes. Okay, and I did that earlier, so we're done. This is what we're going to be seeing. We're going to be seeing an elastic dough that doesn't stick on your fingertips, and we're going to transfer it to the container where we sprayed the cooking spray earlier. You want to turn the dough over several times, maybe even drag it on the sides. You want to get the dough covered with the cooking oil. Now, one of the reasons this is a lower calorie recipe is because you're using cooking spray instead of standard canola oil. It's the same oil, it's just less amounts, and it gets the job done just as good. Alright? You take a small dishcloth or towel, you put it over the dough. Now usually I let this rise in the kitchen, but it's cold here in the wintertime, so I'm going to have to go to a different location. This is where multitasking comes in. This is the laundry room. Now there is a load of clothes in the dryer here, but I'm going to use the heat from the dryer to help raise this spread by just placing the dough right on top of the dryer. Okay, you want to keep the towel on and make sure it's safe. This is going to need to rise 2.5 to 3 hours. 3 hours is ideal, so make sure you plan on that. 3 hours alone to rise, and you might need an extra 30 minutes or so for the actual cooking of your pizza. Good night, dough. See you in a bit. after your dough has risen for the 2.5 to 3 hours, you take the dough out, you put it in a pan, and this dough is going to be kind of sticky once it rises. So you'll have to use your cooking spray again to spray the cooking spray all over your hands to help make the spreading out of the dough easier. You also want to spray a little bit of the cooking oil on your pan so the dough doesn't stick to the pan in ways it shouldn't, okay? So you just take your dough out once it's risen, spray a little cooking spray on the bottom of the pan, spray a lot of cooking spray on your hands to make it easier to spread. Spread out the dough as even as you can get it. You're going to be baking this in a preheated oven. You want to preheat it for 475 degrees. You're going to be cooking the crust for anywhere from 8 minutes to 12 minutes, depending on what level of crispiness you want. You want to take it out when it's starting to get golden brown on the top. That's a good indication it's about done. And you want to take it out of the oven to let it cool, because if you leave it in the oven to cool, it's going to overbake and it runs the risk of burning or just becoming too crispy for your liking. Alright, so in a few hours from now, I'll show you the end result of the crust being baked after it's baking, and I'll check you then. Well, here we are again for round 2 of healthier pizza crust. Let me show you what I've been doing. This will be the toppings for one of the pizzas. It's spinach, diced onion, diced mushrooms, garlic, and a little bit of garlic salt. Alright, make sure that's on low. Go ahead and turn that off because it's cooked and we don't want it to cook until it burns on us. We need to get the oven preheated for 475 degrees. Okay, get that started preheating. Now, we put this dough in the laundry room on top of the dryer to have some more heat for it to rise. Let's see if it did. Dun 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 dun. It rose. Not as much as usual, but for this cold weather, it'll work. Alright, so we get rid of that towel there. Since this dough is kind of sticky, we're going to be using some more canola oil on our hands. But first we need to prepare the surfaces of our stoneware. Now you can use a pan or you can use a stoneware, but you just lightly spritz on your surfaces to help make spacing out the dough easier. And we're also going to be putting this oil on our hands because otherwise the dough would stick to our hands and it'd be kind of hard to put on. It's going to be rather hard for me anyway to put this dough on today because I lacerated the fire out of my finger here and it went pretty deep. The floor of the kitchen kind of looked like a crime scene in certain areas. Here's a photo. Yeah, but it's fine. I'm a quick healer. I'm part alien, so I'm a quick healer. So I'm going to need to put the camera down to work with this dough, and when I come back I'll show you how it worked. When you're putting in dough, one thing before I put the camera down, you always want to put the mass of the dough in the center and work your way out to the edges. That way it's easier to get an even amount of dough all the way around your pizza. Right? Alright, it's 475 and we have the pizzas, the dough, all set and ready to go. May not be the prettiest thing, but homemade, rustic, tastes a lot better than store-bought in my opinion. We have 2 pizzas set up from the one bowl of dough and 2 stoneware cooking surfaces. We're going to put it in a preheated 475 degree oven, and we're going to start at 7 minutes. Then we're going to check it and see if it needs a little bit more. Because this is homemade dough, you need to take your time and make sure it's cooked right and not overcooked. You want something that's golden brown, but definitely not burnt. Alright, pop those bad boys in, and we'll start the timer and come back in about 7 minutes, see if they're cooked. More than likely the bottom one will need to be cooked a bit more because it's a smaller stoneware, but usually the top one gets cooked at about 7 to 9 minutes depending on how thick the crust is. But we're going to check it off and on, and once they're done to our satisfaction, we're going to put them on the counter to cool. Now this is just the pre-bake. We're getting the crust pre-baked because the people I'm cooking it for like a little bit of crisp to their crust. So we're giving it a little bit of pre-bake, so when we put the toppings on and bake them the second time, they'll be nice and crispy and everything will be golden brown and goodness in a hot container. See you in a bit. Okay, let's take a look. Yep, that top one looks about right. We had to wait another 5 minutes, so that top one has had 12 minutes to bake. Let's take that out. Put the camera down. Dun, 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 dun. The bottom one looks like it's going to need 5 more minutes, so we're going to give that 5 more minutes. Let's take a look at the top. This is how it looks like at the end of pre-bake. It's a nice little light brown, not a deep brown. And here is the main reason we sprayed the pan a little bit before we baked it. We could take that right off if we wanted to, put it on another surface, but since we only have 2 pizzas tonight, we're going to leave this one on there, but we're going to move this other one to another pan. I'll tell you the reason for that later. Alright, we took the second pizza from the stoneware that we baked it in and put it on this pan here. The reason for that is because the person that likes the spinach version pizza likes it to have a really pronounced crispness to it. And I make sure that it has that because I can see the edges start to get really dark, almost to the point of like a dark brown or a light black. That way I know that I have the crispiness that she's going to like. The regular pizza, it's already kind of dark brown, golden brown to begin with because it's not going to need that much baking. And so this will be the pepperoni and cheese pizza. Alright, we're going to let this stuff cool down a little bit and then we shall top them. Here they are. We have a spinach, mushroom, onion pizza with mozzarella, feta, and Parmesan cheese. We have your standard mozzarella, pepperoni, cheese pizza. And all we have to do to get them ready to eat is preheat the oven back to 475, cook both of them for about 7 to 8 minutes more, and then we'll be ready to eat. Well, that's it for the Journey of Jim. Next episode, I'm going to take you on to the Christmas party that I'm going to right before I leave for Camden, Tennessee, to spend some time with my friends and family back for the Christmas holidays. So until then, goodbye!